Key City Church. It is so good to be with you guys this evening. We are so excited to have you here. Number one, because we're always excited to be with you guys. We love you so much and enjoy all the time that we get to spend together. But especially this week because we are kicking off a brand new series, like Austin said, which is going to be a 6-week conversation where we're going to be talking all about what makes you happy. And we're excited about that because who doesn't want to be happy, right? I think we would all agree that we all want to be happy. And what we find so fascinating about that, about the fact that we all want to be happy, what's so fascinating is that while we want to be so happy and we are like creatures or beings that are always seeking and looking for happiness, it turns out as we look backwards on our lives, it turns out we are terrible predictors of what actually makes us happy, right? When you look back over your life at the things that you thought would make you happy, right? How few things actually produce the happiness that you thought they would produce. As beings that are constantly seeking and pursuing happiness, and we know this because when we look back over our lives, in the times that we were seeking happiness, how often did we not only poorly predict what would make us happy, but the seeking of happiness actually ended up undermining our happiness, right? How often in the pursuit of happiness did your pursuit of happiness actually end up sabotaging your happiness? Right? We're beings that are always seeking happiness, but are poor predictors of what actually makes us happy. And so it's why we're excited to have this conversation and explore this together to see and understand, like, why are we such poor predictors of what makes us happy? And how do we become better at predicting the things and doing the things that actually do make us happy? So we're excited to start this conversation with you guys. And as we start this conversation, for all of us to get on the same sheet, so we're all talking about the same thing, we're going to define happiness, at least have a working definition of what we consider happiness to be. This is a more technical definition of happiness, that happiness is subjective well-being combined with a sense of purpose and meaning. So subjective well-being, which is like overall in our lives, doesn't mean that we're always, in a good mood, doesn't mean that we never feel sad, we never feel angry, we never feel upset. But overall, if we kind of look at our lives right now, do we tend to have a sense of joy, peace, contentment, or subjective well-being in our lives? So we have subjective well-being combined with a sense of purpose and meaning. Or another way to define this, and this is my preferred definition, and I know you're not supposed to use like the word that you're defining and the definition for the word that you're defining, but if you've been with us for very long, you know at Key City Church, we're not all about rules and regulations and requirements, right? So we're going to break the rules. Happiness is happiness in your life and happiness with your life. That you are happy in your life, in your day-to-day life. You tend to feel content, joy, peace. You tend to be happy in your life, and you tend to be happy with your life. That when you look at your life, you're happy with what you're doing. You have a sense of purpose and a sense of meaning. So you're happy in and happy with your life. Now, I want to make a footnote, a caveat to our whole series, and we'll repeat this as we go through, is that we understand that happiness is complex. There are a lot of different factors that feed into and influence our happiness. And so we don't mean to oversimplify happiness because we understand that it's complex. So if there are times when we do oversimplify happiness or we seem to, we apologize for that and ask you guys to have grace for us. But we do recognize that happiness is also a very individual thing. That there are a lot of individual things that feed into happiness. There are individual circumstances. Happiness is impacted by genetics. It's impacted by, psychology, brain chemistry. It's impacted by our past and our experiences and trauma and the things that we're carrying with us. That individually we might have different capacities for happiness. And so we recognize all of those things. So forgive us if we oversimplify happiness. We recognize it's complex. But simultaneously, we recognize that there are some general observations that we can make about happiness that may pertain to most of us. And so those are the things that we're going to try to stick with. And to get into what we're going to be talking about today, I want to bring up two observations that I think all of us could agree on about happiness. I think we'd be all on the same page about these things. And the first one is that we want to be happy, right? I think we'd all agree with that observation, that generally we all want to be happy. There are few of us who are waking up in the morning thinking, you know what? I hope I don't accidentally become happy today, because really I just want to be unhappy, right? We don't get to the end of the day and think, you know what? Today was a great day because I was unhappy all day long. Because I was unhappy all day long, I'm just so happy, right? It would be contradictory. Like nobody wants to be unhappy. We all want to be happy. And the other observation that I think we could all agree on, it's a little bit more far-fetched, but maybe we could recognize that we're not always happy, right? All of us want to be happy, but we're not always happy. And again, I don't mean like we never feel, like we feel sad sometimes or angry sometimes, we feel upset sometimes, but like over like periods of our life where we have seasons, where we have times where we're just not happy. And we would say that we're not happy in our lives and we're not happy with our lives. We're just not happy. Now, this is interesting that we want to be happy and we're not always happy. And we could draw maybe one of two conclusions about this. That if we want to be happy and we're not always happy, then either one, we don't actually want to be happy, and we wouldn't agree with that, right? Or two, we don't know how to be happy. And we wouldn't be very inclined to agree with that one either, right? Because we all know what would make us happy, right? And if I walked around and interviewed you guys or gave you a survey or just asked you straight up, like, what makes you happy? There are things that would come to your mind, like images would populate your mind and your imagination about what would make you happy. And you'd be able to tell me pretty quickly and pretty easily what would make you happy. In fact, your explanation might sound like something along the lines of, I'll be happy, in fact, what makes me happy, I'll be happy if, right? I'll be happy if the proposal is accepted. I'll be happy if I get into that college that I want to go to. I'll be happy if I get the raise that I asked for. I'll be happy if, and you probably have something that you could fill in after that, if. You'll be happy if something happens the way that you want it to happen. Or I'll be happy when, right? I'll be happy when I finally graduate. I'll be happy when I finally get a job. I'll be happy when I'm married. I'll be happy when the kids are sleeping through the night. I'll be happy when I get the promotion, right? I'll be happy when. Or I'll be happy as long as the kids stay healthy, as long as she doesn't leave me. I'll be happy as long as I don't lose the job. I'll be happy as long as we can keep the house. I'll be happy as long as. And the reason we can think of things that populate this, the reason we can think of things that make us happy is because a deep down belief that you have, a deep down belief that I promise I have, a deep down belief that we all have, that we believe we'll be happy given the right. That if the things in our life, if the people, the conditions, the circumstances in our lives, if the external conditions in our lives are just right, then we can be happy, right? And we can imagine this, right? And we can imagine that if we just had a magic wand and we could just magically make our circumstances whatever we wanted them to be, that we would be happy. But here's what we also know, and you know this. You've probably given unsolicited advice to friends about this, and they probably rolled their eyes at you, but you gave it to them anyway. But then we don't want to hear this advice, and the advice is this: that when we believe that happiness is found in our external circumstances, number one, what we end up doing is we end up putting off our happiness, right? When we say, I'll be happy when, we're saying, I won't be happy until. I won't be happy until I get that job. I won't be happy until the kids are finally out of the house. I won't be happy until. And we put off our happiness. And each time we get to the next milestone, guess what we do? We put it off until the next one, don't we? We keep putting off our happiness, and guess what we never find? happiness. Or we end up having to continue to pursue happiness. And you've experienced this, where there's that thing that you thought would make you happy, that thing that if I just have this thing, I'll be so happy. And then you got that thing, and it didn't make you as happy as you thought it would make it. And you realize, maybe I need a better thing. Maybe I need a newer thing. Maybe I need a more expensive thing. This wasn't the right thing. I need another thing to make me happy. Or I need more of those things to make me happy because the thing didn't make you happy. So you keep pursuing happiness. And each time you get the thing that you thought would make you happy and it doesn't, you know what you feel like? You feel like, but I'm almost there. I feel like the next step will get me there. I'm so close to happiness, just one more thing or a little bit bigger of a thing. But you keep going, you keep pursuing, or when our happiness is based on external circumstances and we actually have the thing that we think will make us happy, we end up protecting the thing, right? As long as I can just hold on to this relationship, like I'm finally dating the guy I wanted to date, I'm finally dating the girl I wanted to date, and I'll only be happy as long as I can have this relationship. Or I'll only be happy as long as I can have this job. Or I'm only happy as long as I can have this thing. And we feel like we have to control and protect and guard that thing, right? And you know what we find? That we're just not very happy. That as long as we continue to seek our happiness in the right external circumstances, what we never quite find is happiness. And maybe it's because we will never find happiness when our happiness is contingent on the right external circumstances. Because maybe, just maybe, there is no thing that can make me happy. Maybe there's no thing that exists outside of you. No set of circumstances, no relationship, no title, no accolades. No thing outside of you can make you happy. And maybe as long as we pursue happiness in a thing that's outside of us or in circumstances that are outside of us, maybe that pursuit of happiness outside of us will always end up undermining our own happiness. And so we have to re-examine this belief that we'll be happy in the right external circumstances. And what's really interesting about that belief, that we'll be happy given the right external circumstances, this isn't a new belief. Like, we didn't just come up with this belief and this isn't a modern belief. Like, this belief has been around as long as people have been around. And in fact, it's a belief that Jesus addressed 2,000 years ago. And in fact, in the conversation that Jesus had, when he was teaching multitudes of people, thousands of people, and we come across this conversation, it's presented to us by a man named Luke, and Luke had witnesses of the life of Jesus, the eyewitnesses who'd walked with, talked with, and learned from Jesus, who saw Jesus crucified and then saw him raised from the dead, and went out into the streets of Jerusalem and risked their lives in the face of the people who had put Jesus to death, that Luke came across the eyewitnesses and was so won over by their accounts and what they experienced that Luke became a follower of Jesus, and he hung out with the eyewitnesses and traveled with them and sat around fires with them and listened to them tell the stories of Jesus' life over and over again. And Luke interviewed the eyewitnesses, and he wrote it all down into an account of the life of Jesus that we find in the New Testament portion of our Bibles, not so subtly titled Luke. And in Luke's account of the life of Jesus, one day we find Jesus teaching thousands, what Luke describes as thousands of people, so many people that they're like walking on each other. And Jesus is just laying out like this incredible, genius, spiritual teaching to all of them, these things that they'd never heard before, teaching them things that they'd never thought about, that they'd never considered before. And everybody's quiet and everybody's listening. And then it's one of those moments. And if you're a parent, you've probably had these moments. You're teaching something to your kids, right? You're just laying out some Yoda wisdom, like you're giving them the best that you have. And they're so quiet, and they're just sitting there so quietly, and you think like, man, I'm such a good parent. I'm really getting through to them. Like, just patting yourself on the back. And one of your kids is like, hey, Mom, hey, Dad. And you're like, Oh, yeah. We're connecting right here. Dad of the year, mom of the year right here. We're connected. He said, yeah, what is it, son? He says, I can't find my booger. And you realize, like, nothing got through. They didn't hear anything that you just said, right? It was one of those moments. Jesus is teaching the crowd, then somebody raises their hand and they have something to say. And Jesus is like, are you kidding? Have you heard anything that I've said? It was one of those moments. And here's what he says. Someone from the crowd, in the middle of Jesus' teaching, says, Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me. And Jesus, you just imagine the internal eye roll that Jesus has in this moment and the wondering of like, have you heard anything that I've said? Like, are you serious about? Will your brother share with you? Are you joking? Like, I wasn't. Here's what Jesus says. Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you? I mean, I divinely came into creation to reveal to you what God is like, and you want me to settle a dispute about sharing with your brother? Are you kidding me? But Jesus doesn't say it quite like that. In fact, Jesus is so Jesus, and he's so good, and he's so wise, that instead Jesus sees through and sees where this guy is, and based on the customs of that time, what is likely is that this man who is in the crowd probably has an older brother, and they lost their parents, and their inheritance to the eldest son, which was the tradition of that time. But then that eldest son didn't share any of what they left with his brother. And Jesus sees like, all right, this makes sense. Like, this guy's really upset because that's unjust. That's pretty unfair, right? That's pretty unfair. When your parents have left their entire estate to your sibling, they don't give you any of it. I mean, maybe you've seen families break up over the way that the estates have been shared after the death of parents. Like, it gets pretty ugly. And so we can understand this guy's upset. And he's probably even wondering, if I don't get what I'm owed, if I don't get justice, if I don't get what I deserve, I mean, how could I be happy? And Jesus probably senses as he looks around and sees the crowd of people nodding. You know, sees these thousands of people who are like, yeah, tell his brother to share with him because that's messed up. So Jesus takes it as an opportunity to teach him something about happiness. And here's what he says. He says, watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. To which the crowd would probably be thinking, greed? Like, he's not greedy. He just wants what he's owed. He just wants what he deserves. Like, it's just justice. It would just be right for his brother to share with him. It's not greed. Jesus says, well, listen. Life in an abundance of possessions. And that word life, it comes from a Greek word, zoe. And it means like life abundantly, like fullness of life, vitality. What we today might call happiness. It's about having that deep sense of joy and peace and contentment that we would call happiness. Jesus saying, look, life or happiness does not consist in abundance. You will not, as much as you think you will, and I get it, you think you will not find happiness in an abundance of finances. You will not find happiness in an abundance of health care. You will not find happiness in an abundance of safety. You will not find happiness in an abundance of house or enough vacations. You will not find happiness in an abundance. I'm sorry to break the news to you, but you're not going to find happiness out here. And so Jesus, just being so Jesus and just being, always had a story for everything, always willing to illustrate things just to make them really clear and really tangible. Jesus tells them a story, and he tells them a story about this farmer who has this amazing crop. He has this amazing crop, and his barns aren't big enough to hold the crop. So this man takes his crop, and he decides, what I'm going to do is I'm going to build bigger barns. I'm going to bring in all of this crop. And there's so much that I'm not even going to have to work anymore. I'm just going to sit back and take it easy. I'm going to eat. I'm going to drink. And I'm going to be so happy. And Jesus says, and then God showed up. Everybody's like, oh, here we go. God's going to ruin it. God shows up and God tells the farmer, he's like, this very night, your life is going to be demanded from you. Like, you're going to lose your life tonight. And then what? When we bring the end of your life up until this point right now, and the clock's ticking, and you look on your abundance now, how much does it really matter? Right? There's something about an end-of-life perspective that puts everything in perspective, doesn't it? Right? And if you've been at a funeral, if you've been at a memorial service, and you've listened to people celebrate someone at the end of their life, and the things that they look back on, and the things that they appreciated about that person, and the times where they felt close, and when you walk away from those moments, and you know this if you've been there, when you walk away from those moments, you walk away with a completely different perspective on your life. A completely different perspective on what you're worried about. A completely different perspective on the things that you're chasing down that you think are going to make you so happy. You walk away with a completely different perspective. Those things that you thought mattered so much, those things that you thought would make you happy, you walk away like, no. You realize that's not it. We know this. When we come to the end of our lives and we're looking back and the clock's ticking down and we know this is it, the things that we look back on with gratitude and appreciation, the things that we look back on and regret, aren't the things that we tend to worry about in the day-to-day. Tend to have nothing to do with the things that we think will make us happy. And that was Jesus' point. And so he says to his disciples, therefore, I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you will wear. So Jesus is taking eating and what we wear, clothes and food, as proxies for external circumstances, as proxies for abundance, for that sense of if I just have this, or if I have enough of this, or if I can just maintain this, I'll be happy. Jesus is taking this, the external circumstances, and just referring to it as food and clothes. He's like, don't worry about those things. What he's pointing out is when we pursue those things, when we pursue external circumstances, when we base our happiness on external circumstances, you know what it produces? It doesn't produce happiness. It produces worry. She's like, when you look to find happiness in your circumstances, you are going to end up living from a place of worry and fear and anxiety and insecurity. But you want this. He goes on. For life, your life, like happiness, abundance of life. Life is more than food. It is in the body more than clothes. That your life, what ultimately satisfies you, has so much more to do, is so much more than just external circumstances, than abundance. And C.S. Lewis of Chronicles of Narnia fame, C.S. Lewis describes it this way. He says, we are creatures created for heaven, trying to find satisfaction in paltry things like food and drink and sex. He says, we're like children playing and making mud pies who refuse an offer for a vacation because we can't even imagine what a weekend at the shore would feel like. We're these beings created for eternal existence in the presence of God, trying to find satisfaction in these paltry pleasures. And Jesus is like, you'll never find it because you are made for so much more. It'll never fill you up. It'll never be enough because you were created for so much more than that. And he goes on. And do not set your heart on what you'll eat or drink. Don't worry about it. Like, don't set your heart on it. Don't desire for it. Because what does it produce? It just ends up producing worry. But you don't find happiness. He says, for the pagan world runs after all such things. The pagan world, those who have no interest in God, those who have no interest in the divine, those who have no curiosity about their own soul, those who have no interest in spiritual matters, They just run after all those things. And we see this. And Jesus is like, do they look happy? The people who are always running after the next thing, the people who have the side hustle and the side hustle next to the side hustle going on, they're trying to make everything happen. Do they look happy? The pagan world runs after all such things. And your Father, He knows. He already knows that you need Him. So then what? And Jesus had His audience right where He wanted them. It's like, you're not going to find it out here. In fact, the more you try to find it out here, the more it's going to undo the happiness that you might already have. It's just going to create worry and fear. And they're all wondering, well then, where do we find happiness? If not out here, where are we supposed to find happiness? So Jesus says, but seek His kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well. If you're looking for happiness, if you're looking for what's ultimately going to satisfy you, it's ultimately going to bring you peace and contentment, fulfillment and happiness and joy. If you're looking for that, Jesus, you know where you're going to find it? Seek His kingdom. You're not going to find it out here in abundance, finances, and the better job, the bigger car, the nicer house. You're not going to find it out here. You're going to find it when you seek His kingdom. And when we hear kingdom, again, kingdom is just so weird and we don't really understand it. It almost sounds like heaven. Is Jesus saying like when we get to heaven we'll be happy? Like, so we just have to settle in and like suck it up through this life because when we die then we'll finally be happy? Is that what we're saying? What does Jesus mean? The kingdom. And where is the kingdom? Where do we find the kingdom? And if you're wondering that, you're in good company because I believe there was somebody in Jesus' audience that day who was wondering the same thing. What do you mean kingdom and where do we find it? Because what we find in Luke's account a couple days later, somebody asks exactly that question. And I believe it was because they were there that one day and Jesus said, you'll find happiness in my kingdom. They're like, I wonder where that is. So a couple days later, they raised their hand and said, Jesus, by the way, where do we find your kingdom? And Jesus tells them, the coming of the kingdom of God is not something that can be observed. You're not going to see it. You can't drive to it. You can't observe it. Nor will people say, here it is, or there it is, right? The kingdom of God isn't something you can drive to. It's not something that you can go to. It's not something that you can touch. It's not something out here. Jesus says, let me tell you where you'll find the kingdom of God. You who are looking for happiness, who've been down so many dead-end roads and never found it, and they never delivered, you never got it. You who are looking for the abundant life, for fullness, for peace, for happiness, for joy. Let me tell you where to find it, where the kingdom is, where you'll find it. He says, the kingdom of God is within you. That God's kingdom is within you. Which sounds strange because what does that mean that there's a kingdom within me? It doesn't even make any sense. Unless we consider that God's kingdom is wherever God rules and reigns, which sounds really authoritative, right? But Jesus showed us how God rules and reigns. And the way that God rules and reigns isn't by force, it's not by fear, it's not coercion, but Jesus showed us. Jesus came to show us just what God was like. And the way that He ruled was by invitation, by inviting people. Just follow me. Just follow me. That God's rule over people is invitational. It's when we see the goodness of God demonstrated in Jesus and we trust Him and we follow Him. Jesus said God rules by invited people into was to follow Him in His way of love. Jesus said the rest of the world will know that you're my disciples, my students, my followers by how you love one another. That you love one another as I have loved you. Jesus, the King, was inviting us to the kingdom of God. A kingdom in which we follow him and learn to love the way that God and Jesus has loved us. And when we align our lives with Jesus' way of love, you know what we find? Happiness. It's what satisfies the human heart. It's what we're designed for. It's what we're made for. And we know this. When you look back over your life at the moments where you had what you would call happiness, it was moments where you were in some way aligned with the way of love, whether you knew God or you knew Jesus or is spiritual or not. When you found yourself as a recipient of love, when you found yourself as a giver of love, when you found yourself in alignment, way of love, it's where we find it. It's where we find the joy and the peace and the happiness that we're all looking for. And wherever you find someone who's aligned with God's way of love, you find God ruling and reigning. Wherever there's someone who's freely aligned with his way of love. And you know where that happens? You know where alignment with God's way of love occurs? It happens within you. It happens within me. It happens within us. Which is why Jesus would say, the kingdom of God is within you. It's within you, which means that if we find happiness in the kingdom of God by seeking his kingdom, the happiness that's within us. I taught a similar lesson like this one time to a group of high school students, and I did this super corny illustration. So like, if you're ever teaching high school students, don't do this. It's way too corny. But this is what I did. I taught a lesson similar to this, and at the end of the lesson, I told this group of high school students, I said, in this room, like you can't see them, but like hidden, there are places where you can't see, hidden in this room are like fist-sized, three-dimensional hearts. Okay, I'm going to release you in a second to go find them. If you can find them, if you can find where they are and tell me where you found them, you know, you can win some kind of prize for like your whole small group. Like if anybody can find them. And so like, then I released them. They just start tearing the room apart, like turning everything upside down, like taking cushions off of sofas. And every time they'd look in one place and it wasn't there, they'd feel like, okay, I'm narrowing it down. I'm getting close. And they'd go look somewhere else. And like spent like 10 minutes just tearing the room apart. And then I called them all back. Like, nobody had found anything. I called them all back. They all came back to the where we were teaching. I said, okay, now, I want everybody to stand up. Let's just say the Pledge of Allegiance. Which is weird because nobody does that. And we didn't. Anyway, so they all stood up. And they put their hands over their hearts. And I asked them, what's your hand over right now? And they all said, our hearts. It's like, ta-da! You did it. And they're all like, that's dumb. I was like, I know. But like, this is how we live our lives. This is what people do. They spend their whole lives tearing everything apart, trying to find happiness out here and over here and under here. And every time we look for it in one place and don't find it there, we feel like we're getting closer, like we've just eliminated that as a possibility. We're just getting closer. We go and look over here. But the whole time, I told them, the whole time, it's been right here. It's within you all along. And all this mess that you made, all this energy that you expended, it was right here all along. Which is the point that Jesus is trying to make to the crowds. Jesus is inviting us into. The happiness you're looking for, the happiness we're looking for, it's not out here. We'll never find it. In fact, it'll steal our happiness as long as we look for it. It's right here. It's been here all along. Happiness, the happiness you're looking for, the happiness I'm looking for, comes not from the right external circumstances, but the right internal conditions. And if we go back to the question that we started this whole thing out with, we ask the question, what makes you happy? This is a weird answer. I know this sounds so weird, but the answer to that question is you do. You do. You make you happy. You're responsible for your happiness. You over your happiness. You determine your happiness. And if that feels like a lot of weight, and if that feels like a lot of responsibility, I want you to feel empowered by it, because when we put our happiness on external circumstances, we're giving control of our happiness away to our lives. We're giving control of our happiness away to the our lives. We're giving control of our happiness away to the circumstances in our lives. We're giving up control and power over our own happiness. And what Jesus is inviting you into is to take control back. It's like you have the power over your happiness. You have control over your happiness. Whatever your circumstances are, I know circumstances are important. We'll get to that later. Whatever your circumstances, whatever the people are, whatever the hurting relationships in your life are, I'm telling you, you have power over your happiness, because the kingdom of God is within you. And this is what we're going to be exploring in this conversation as we continue on through the next 5 weeks. The whole conversation starts and ends right here, that you and I have control and power over our own happiness. And we're going to be exploring how to do that, how to create that, how to cultivate that, how to claim power over our own happiness. And so we hope and we invite you guys to join us next Sunday and the following Sundays after that as we continue to explore and discover what makes you happy. Would you guys pray with me? Father, we are so grateful to you that you are a God who created us to be happy. You created us to experience life and joy, fulfillment. Oh, and you long for us to discover it. And as you watch us, your children, just making a wreck of things sometimes, trying to find it. Oh, you're inviting us back to you, where you can teach us, where we can learn from you how and where to find the happiness that you've created us for. And so, Father, as we continue in this series, as we continue coming to you with humble curiosity, we pray that you would allow us to hear from you in deep and personal and meaningful ways. And we ask it in Jesus. Amen.